Welcome, everybody, to the NFL Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. The NFL Show ain't sponsored by nobody yet, but it's about to be, so keep an ear out for that. I am your host for the NFL Show, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome my co-host today because on Tuesdays, Sam has to clean the house for his mom because he's 12 years old. And today, it'll be just the adults here, which will be me and FF Face-Off host, Anthony Cervino. How you doing, Anthony?
I'm doing great, Mike, but man, you're brutal.
Well, I figured it's a good day to take shots at Sam because he's not here. Let that be a lesson to you.
Oh, he was running his mouth about my Super Bowl pick, which, checked all the boxes.
Checked all what boxes?
Everything that I said that had an effect on the game, whether it was Sammy Watkins, the quarterback, the mobile quarterback.
No, this was all on Kyle Shanahan. He's an idiot.
Now that we brought the Super Bowl up again, are you worried? Because this is a question going around a lot of the national media feeds. Is there a concern? Should the 49ers be concerned with the relationship between Garoppolo and Shanahan?
What do you mean by relationship?
Well, the fact that, Shanahan blatantly showed his quarterback that he does not trust him.
I think I said
is there going to be a fracture moving forward? Because these two are going to be tied together, like it or not, for the next, 3 to 5 years?
Maybe, unless one of them's gone before then. And I still think this. I think you could watch the players' reaction to Shanahan. I mean, come on. Shanahan looks like he's 12 anyways with his flat-billed hat walking around. He looks like an idiot. I don't like him. I didn't like him 2 years ago when he screwed up the Super Bowl for the Falcons. And I was actually cheering for the Patriots, so I didn't mind that as much as this one. But, I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo played for 3 quarters. He was better than Patrick Mahomes. Flat out. He just was. He played better. And I still think this comes to Kyle Shanahan, and he is a guy that, when in doubt, will throw the ball. I don't think it's a great idea. And, yeah, I think there's going to be an issue because it's Kyle Shanahan. He's blown a 28-10 lead, or 28-9 lead, was it, going into the fourth quarter, and a 20-10 lead with 6 or 7 minutes left. I think Jimmy Garoppolo catches more crap than he needs to here because I don't think the game was called with the best chance for them to win the game. I think this is an issue of Kyle Shanahan, and I said it yesterday before everybody else started talking about it. I don't think the Niners will ever win a Super Bowl with Kyle Shanahan because I don't think any team ever will.
See, I said this on my show last night, which was the Super Bowl reaction, and I think it's a little premature to say anything about Shanahan or Garoppolo. I don't know about their relationship. I'm not speaking in terms of their personal relationship.
I know you're talking about the subliminal messages, like, the New York Jets and, what was it, Rex Ryan and Mark Sanchez.
What's that?
Well, Mark Sanchez, they went to 2 straight championship games, lost them both because they were afraid to throw the ball. And during that, in both seasons, Mark Sanchez was told, just don't lose us the game. That's not the way to gain a quarterback's trust. And you don't trust a quarterback that way. And I think that eventually that's why Ryan ended up in a booth, because he never gave Sanchez a chance to fail or succeed.
I'm speaking in terms of, what has Kyle Shanahan been a head coach for, 3 years? Jimmy Garoppolo's been a starter for, 2 or 3 years?
This was Garoppolo's first full year as a starter, though.
But he spent a lot of games on the sideline injured. It wasn't his third year.
No, it's his
first year.
It's his
first full season as a starter.
That's what I just said. You're the one
right,
who said
that he was played completely healthy. So I think, if we look at the Rams last year with Sean McVay and Jared Goff and how they completely regressed because of Todd Gurley, what Kyle Shanahan does and the way the 49ers team, they play football, if you look at all the depth that they have, I don't think there's going to be a tremendous regression. So there's a good chance that this team's going to be in the postseason again, fighting for a Super Bowl again. And if this happens again, let's say they get into a championship game or a Super Bowl next year or the year after, and the same thing happens, then yeah, we can bury them. But after this first time with this pairing, let's see it again.
I don't need to see it again. He pissed it away. He got outcoached. And my big takeaway from this is still that Eric Bieniemy should be a head football coach somewhere, especially when you look at the guys that already have jobs.
Oh, I agree. I think he should have been a head coach after last season.
Yeah, he should have been a head coach of the Bengals instead of that little kid, Opie Taylor. So, I'll tell you this, and it goes back. My feeling on Shanahan is the same feeling that I have on Opie Taylor. I think he's a better coach than Opie, but it still, to me, is PlayStation football. And you can't reverse and throw deep. You can't reverse your way to winning a Super Bowl. And the one thing you noticed and I think this is something that a lot of people missed, was in the first half, the Chiefs attempted to run their little jet sweeps and their end arounds. And the best they ever did was 5 yards out of it. And they actually had one time it blew up in their face and cost them 10 yards. And when you play a really good football team, it's hard to run jet sweeps and end arounds and reverses. And the thing you saw in the second half was the Chiefs stopped doing that. The 49ers never stopped doing that. And I know it worked early on for Deebo Samuel, but when you're playing against the 49ers, who are a very fast team sideline to sideline, you can't run that play. And they kept trying to run that play. And a lot of the things here, the second down and 6, or the second 5 after the big first down run in the last 5 or 6 minutes, when you look at that, that wasn't Shanahan's play because Jimmy G audibled out and went into an even worse play. So right there, you could say, well, that's all Jimmy G's fault. But I'm telling you, if I've got 2nd and 4 and I'm a team that runs the ball, I'm running the ball there. I don't care what Jimmy G sees. I'm going to tell him this is the play, run it. And we're going to run the ball 2 more times because we're going to run a minute off the clock. And chances are we're getting the first down. The other thing I didn't like was the lack of taking a shot at the third level of the field with the wide receivers. You have to be able to, especially with play action, if you don't stretch the field vertically with your wideouts, you're eventually going to get what you got was the Chiefs blitzing them.
You know, and I feel like something that you brought up last week, the fact that they didn't take a lot of shots, because the shot that they did take when Emmanuel Sanders had a step on those 2 D-backs and Garoppolo missed the throw, they didn't get to take advantage of Sorensen being in the game instead of Thornhill.
Yeah, and that's my point on this. This is why this game was poorly coached to me. I think that you have to take advantage of Sorensen over Thornhill. They didn't do that. And like I said, when they stretched the field, it was usually with Kittle, which is not the same thing. And I talked about this on Friday with this offense, the way it runs with the zone read, the outside zone read. The great thing there is you attack all 3 levels of the defense. The other thing we didn't see that much was the play action where Kittle would come from one side to the other and they'd throw the ball to him. The other thing that stood out to me is just because the team is blitzing you, if you're an outside zone read team, the best thing to counteract that is to basically throw a screen pass to your running back or run a counter up the middle and try to crease him real quick. Or you counter with George Kittle coming around the opposite side and you turn an outside zone left into actually an outside zone right. And if you pin that defensive end, you've got a huge gain. This was a horribly called game by Kyle Shanahan. I got, Matt, my buddy who does the 49ers show with Dexter Carter, trying to argue it with me. And I know how this is when you're a fan of a team and you want something to work and you you got your heart and soul into it, but he screwed the pooch here. And Andy Reid, I don't think necessarily called a great game, but the one thing Andy Reid didn't do was he didn't cost himself the game. And I also see people say, well, you always blame the coach when you lose the game. And it's always the coach's fault, and the coach sucks. And the point is this, in football, a coach has so much bearing on the outcome of the game, on every play. Yeah, that's how this works a lot of times, especially if the two teams are closely matched. And I think also the 49ers were just a more complete, more talented team, and they blew it. When you've got the better team and you lose, you got to take at least a little bit of the blame.
Yeah, I have no disagreement there.
Yeah, because the Chiefs' defense is still it's an average defense. But the thing is this, if you take an average defense and you put it with an offense like the Chiefs have, it makes that defense better, if you know what I mean. Because there's pressure on you that you feel like you have to score all the time. But when I looked at these teams, the only positions I saw where I definitely thought the Chiefs were better was quarterback. And during this game, for 3/4 of the game, the better quarterback was actually with the 49ers.
I'll disagree there, and we've had this argument before. I think the Chiefs just have so many wide receivers. I know you think that they're on par, but I'll take what the Chiefs have at wide receiver over what the 49ers
Who you taking at wide receiver, or who you taking at running back, though?
Oh, San Francisco.
That's what I mean. I'm just talking about overall weapons on the offense. I think they're fairly equal. Both teams have a big play tight end. They both have a guy, Deebo Samuel, Tyreek Hill, that can blow the top off the defense. I think the Chiefs do have more depth with their wide receivers, but I think Damian Williams is a really good running back. But the 49ers have 3 guys like that. When healthy, they got 4 or 5 guys like that. That's what I'm saying. I think the big inequality here is defensively, where I do think the Chiefs are a solid defensive team. But I think the 49ers are better than solid, a lot better than solid.
Oh, yeah, the 49ers have they have hands down the best defense in the league.
All right, so we want to go ahead and talk a little NFC East football so we can hit Dak Prescott right away.
I'm just going down the news wire here. Andrew Whitworth is expected to play in 2020.
Yeah, he's too old. He was too old last year.
Not only was he too old, but he was the second highest paid Ram in terms of cap space.
Well, and this is the other thing.
And for a team that needs offensive linemen, you would think that you would want to get off that contract or renegotiate so you can go get somebody else because they need help in the middle of that offensive line after losing Sullivan and Saffold last year because they don't have any draft picks to get them.
Yeah, and that's the thing that blows a team up like this. This is why the 49ers will probably at least be back in the playoffs, so will the Chiefs, right. Because the things that kill people are usually age or guys whose contracts are up. So I think that the Rams will be better off moving on, but like you said, they've killed themselves with the way they've run this team and traded every one of their draft picks away, it seems like. They took a shot to win it, 2 years ago, and it came up short, and I think it bites them in the ass from here. And I think that it's very possible that within 2 or 3 years, they're the team at the bottom of this division.
I agree.
So, all right. So let's look at the NFC East because we're going to start off with the Cowboys, and not just because you're a Cowboy fan and I'd like to pick on you for it, but I think the Cowboys have a front office nightmare here. I mean, they're a team composed of high-profile, unrestricted free agents. There's no way they can keep them all. And now Dak Prescott has to be a priority, but it seems like Dak wants to be paid like an elite quarterback, and you can't do that if you want to win a Super Bowl in Dallas.
No, which is why I think the Cowboys should place the franchise tag on Dak. And I know he doesn't want that, and he wants elite quarterback money. But after that showing, this season against the Saints where you couldn't score a touchdown. And there was a couple of games like that, but especially against the Philadelphia Eagles, which could have clinched that division. And, Carson Wentz was being Carson Wentz and carrying that team when they had injuries all over the offense, and he was still throwing for 300 yards a game in like 3 out of the last 4 or 5 games. And Dak Prescott, when you have depth at receiver with Cooper, Gallup, and Cobb, you have Zeke and Pollard, you have a loaded offense, a better offensive line, and you could not score a touchdown in that game, you're not paying Dak what he wants right now. And if Dak was smart, he should try to prove himself again and play on the franchise tag instead of taking a short deal.
So what if Dak decides not to play?
I don't know if that's Dak.
Why wouldn't it be Dak? It's everybody else, and he's smart to be Dak.
Is it Russ?
Well, how about this? If I'm Dak, I'd sit, because then they're almost going to have to cave to him. Because if not, you're just giving away an entire season. Where did the Cowboys pick in the draft?
Middle. There are 8-8 teams, so they're probably right in the middle.
So, any chance they could trade up into the top 7 or 8 and maybe go with a Justin Herbert or Tua Tagovailoa?
So what, you package Dak?
Package Dak for what? I'm not even saying you got to trade him. I mean,
but that's, to move up, do you trade Dak with, your first round pick and move up to get your future quarterback, or do you keep Dak? Because that's, what do you do with Dak Prescott if you draft a quarterback that's supposed to start?
Well, you got to get rid of him. My question to you is this. Even after this year, though, he's still going to want too much money. And when you look at this, you've already got, Tavon Austin, Randall Cobb, Amari Cooper, all free agents. Everybody wants to get paid. What I see here is this. I see that the Cowboys, if they don't do everything exactly right here, this is going to end up being the, Chan Gailey Dallas Cowboys all over again.
Well, to me, you mentioned Tavon Austin's a wash. He's a special teams guy.
Yeah, but Cobb and Cooper aren't. And Cooper's going to want too much money.
Cobb was a second wave of free agency signing coming out of Green Bay. And they picked Cobb up at a discount. And now that Mike McCarthy's there, I think they can get Cobb at an even lesser rate with an incentivized deal, because I think Cobb's going to want to stay with Mike McCarthy in that system. But, yeah, the issue is Amari Cooper. Cooper, I believe, wants to be a Cowboy. He said he wants to be a Cowboy. So they think the direction is try to get Cooper at a discount and franchise tag Dak.
Do you really think Cooper's going to accept a discount? What's a discount? I mean, I think Amari Cooper thinks he's
wide receiver. What?
He's not a number 1 wide receiver.
He
He's not elite.
He is.
I know. That's the problem.
This is a Cowboys team that this window with Ezekiel, this window is not going to stay open very long. This window has a year, maybe 2 years left if you draft right. And I don't know if Dallas, you're going to punt Cooper and get who? You're going to draft somebody? How many times have first-round wide receivers or rookie wide receivers panned out?
I will tell you this. I'll make this prediction. There's going to be at least 6 studs in this draft that turn out to be studs in the NFL. This is one of the great wide receiver drafts in NFL history.
How about the Aguilar class? When there was 4 or 5 wide receivers going to first round, they were all supposed to be studs, and they barely hang on in the NFL. Kevin White,
what year was
Nelson
that?
Aguilar,
Because
Rashad
this is the
Perriman.
thing. No, this is the thing, though. Nobody that knew anything thought those guys were going to be studs. I mean, it was Mel Kiper thought that.
Like 2011, sure, Julio and A.J. Green, both top 10, top 11 picks. That worked out. A couple years later, in the Sammy Watkins, Odell Beckham Jr. draft. I think Cooper was in that draft, or maybe he was the year after. But it doesn't happen a lot with these first-round wideouts.
It will this year.
And if you let Cooper go and rely on the draft, and you pick somebody in the draft, is Michael Gallup, who's going to assume the number one role, is he a number one? And he drops a lot of passes.
Well, remember this, though. Amari Cooper's not a number one, and he doesn't catch any passes in games that matter normally, especially on the road.
I
think this. I think the Dallas Cowboys are real close to being last place in this division if it wasn't for the fact that the New York Giants and the Washington Redskins were absolutely atrocious in the front office. And I think what you will find out here is the Eagles are usually going to be a division champion in this until everything gets straightened out. You cannot pay Dak Prescott anywhere near what he wants. And if you tie a lot of money up in Dak, Amari, and Ezekiel, then you're probably done, because the other question is Leighton Vander Esch ever going to be happy or healthy?
I mean, that is a big question. He was healthy in his rookie year, but he came into the league with the neck, and he ended this year with the neck. And without Leighton, that defense was night and day difference.
Okay. The other question is Jason Witten coming back?
I don't know, but I mean, as a Cowboys fan, I almost want them to I want to see Blake Jarwin on the field.
Yeah, and he's a restricted free agent, correct?
Oh, Jarwin, I believe so.
Yeah. So this is the thing. I mean, I think the other thing that stands out here is the Cowboys could be, with this free agency, kind of gutted defensively before this is over, Anthony.
Is that all a bad thing, though?
Well, you're the one that told me all year their defense was good.
Their defense was good until they lost, arguably their top player in Leighton.
You got Sean Lee. Would that be a big loss?
No. At this juncture in his career, absolutely not.
Jeff Heath, Byron Jones?
I think Byron wants top-end cornerback money, and I don't think he's worth top-end cornerback money.
Now, this is where I go with this, though. Because if all of a sudden you have to replace half your defense, it's going to be hard to get that wide receiver also. So then you almost have to sign Amari Cooper.
Right. And I don't hate Cooper like you do. I'm okay with Amari Cooper.
Okay, I don't hate him. I think he's a good receiver, but that's it.
Where the Cowboys need to be wise, and we've seen this, and because they've been preparing for these contracts, they're not spending a ton of money. They're not spending any money during the first wave of free agency. They are waiting for the Randall Cobbs to slip through the cracks, or last year on a D-line it was Covington, a situational defensive tackle from Houston. They're going to go get these value players who slip through the cracks. How about Robert Quinn, who they got for nothing? It was a trade.
Yeah, but how about this? As you bring that up, this is where I am next going defensively, because you've got Bennett, Collins, Covington, and Quinn are all unrestricted free agents.
Okay, but Michael Bennett is at the tail end of his career. You're going to take a short deal, or you're going to go to a contending team. Robert Quinn, on the back end of his career, still very much serviceable. He's not the top pass rusher. I think they can get him back at a value. I think a lot of these players, these aren't big-time players.
I know, but the thing is this.
You can go get in the second wave of free agents.
This is my point by saying this whole thing. With Quinn and Bennett, they're older guys. I mean, this defensive line, if you were to keep all four of them together, I think it's safe to say it's not like they're going to get better.
That defensive line was so underwhelming.
I know, and it's not going to get better. These guys are not young pups. At least the half of them aren't. Actually, with all those guys, I would think, the interior D lineman Collins, who had 4 sacks, added 10 quarterback hits. Hell, he might be the most valuable of these guys right now.
You got to keep him.
Yeah, that's what he's the most valuable of the guys right now.
No,
I also think, what about Kai Forbath?
What about him?
Well, he's a journeyman kicker, but, I mean, he did pretty well, so you got to re-sign him. And the other one is this. LP Ladouceur, who's your long snapper, will be in free agency. And that's a guy that's been there since 2005. He's going to be 39, but that's all right with a long snapper that you trust. Those are sometimes hard to find.
Yeah, usually long snappers stay around for a while.
Yeah, so you got to make sure you snap him up. I had to say that. But with the Cowboys, I think there's a lot of issues here and a lot of problems. And the Dak Prescott thing is going to tell us how they're going to go about this. And if they go they can't afford to give him what he wants. And they probably can't afford to get even close to giving him what he wants.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to drag on. I don't see this. This is going to drag on for a while.
All right, next up, let's go to a team that's in probably an even bigger mess than the Cowboys, and that would be the New York Giants. What do you think about the Giants here, looking at them from the outside? Because I didn't like the coaching hires. I didn't like a lot of stuff that they did here. When you look at the roster, they have some guys, but I don't think they have enough guys. What's your take on the Giants?
I'm very optimistic about the offense because they do have a lot of talent. Jason Garrett, as a coordinator, I think he'll be better than he was as a head coach. So I don't really mind that offense. I just don't know how good this head coach is going to be in game situations, and I have a ton of question marks on that defense. But offensively, I think they're going to put up points.
Well, I don't know. Jury's still out on Daniel Jones, too, I think. But if you look at, they've only got a couple really free agents that really matter, I think. That would be Mike Remmers, who started 14 games at right tackle, and Cody Latimer. Outside of those guys, I don't think there's a whole lot there that they have to worry about losing.
No, and I think salary cap-wise, I mean, you should be able to go bring in some talent when you have your stud running back and your, quarterback on their rookie deals.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and that's what made Kansas City successful. Because if you look at it right now, they're not paying Mahomes much, which meant they could pay everybody else. And people keep bringing up, is Mahomes going to get an extension? Why would you want to right now if you're Kansas City? You wait till after next year for that, because right now, his contract being so low is what has made them capable of winning the Super Bowl, I think. Because I think this, and people miss this, but unless he's willing to take less money, people don't realize that Patriots dynasty, a lot of that was because Tom Brady was willing to sacrifice to help get other guys on his team when it came to money. I think that if you have to blow the bank up with Patrick Mahomes and pay him all this money, I think the chances of winning the Super Bowl in the future for the Chiefs actually become less and less the more years you go along, because the more money they're going to be losing to the salary cap.
Yeah, if Daniel Jones is anything close to the real deal, this Giants team, they could make a big step forward this season and then be contending in 2021. Again, you got to get some defensive pieces, and we need to see if Joe Judge is a head coach in the NFL.
Yeah.
Now, the good thing, whether you think it's good or not, I do think it's a good thing Jason Garrett is the offensive coordinator, because I think Jason Garrett is going to be a not a safety net for Joe Judge, but someone to bounce things off of.
I know, because what's better to bounce somebody off of than somebody that was at a place for a decade and completely failed.
But
he can tell you what he did wrong.
How much of Jason Garrett's failure is on Jerry Jones and being pinned under
Well,
Jerry
I
Jones?
would say this. Most of Jason Garrett's failure is the fact that he listened to Jerry Jones. He should have never taken the job.
What's his choice?
Don't take the job? Get the hell out of it. Because this is the thing. And, I mean, I always defended Marvin Lewis with this, but at some point, said you just sit down at the press conference and say, hey, I played this guy because that old asshole told me to. Because the only thing Marvin Lewis did was, he got to stay here 16, 17 years and probably make $50 million. But in the end, even though people talk to him, he probably gets another job never. And if he does, it's going to be in a similar situation. So basically, he just wrote his career's obituary when he became the Bengals head coach and decided to do what Mike Brown told him to do. I mean, I just have a problem with that. I would have a problem being anywhere where I'm being told who to play and who not to play. So with Jason Garrett, I think just from looking at him, I'm pretty sure he's a little weasel. So I don't think it's good to have him there with Joe Judge. You think he is too. The guy failed in Dallas. If you don't realize that he was a failure in Dallas, I don't know what to tell you.
He was a failure. But I always have those question marks of if Jason could have done better elsewhere, or if Jerry wasn't Jerry.
Well, how about this? If Jason could have done better elsewhere and it was a better franchise, they'd have offered him the job. I think that Jerry Jones offers the job to guys that he knows are desperate and will take the job and do what he says, which is why Mike McCarthy is a bad hire. Yeah, Mike McCarthy is desperate.
Cleveland and New York.
Oh, my God. Really? Come on. You know what? Cleveland and New York are about the only places that may not be worse than Jerry Jones. Come on. You just said that his other options were Cleveland and New York.
Last year, it turned him down. Said, no, I'm going to take a year off.
Who'd he turn down?
Last year, he had interviews, and I believe he turned down Cleveland.
Once again, he turned down Cleveland. Anybody in their right mind turns down Cleveland. That's why Cleveland ends up with guys like Freddie Kitchens as their head coach. And Kevin Stefanski.
Tight end coach, so.
Yeah, that's kind of my point. When you go from being the head coach to being the tight ends coach, nobody has a whole lot of respect.
But he started as the tight ends coach in Cleveland. He had no business.
Yeah.
No business being
the great thing for him, was with it being the Giants, he could very easily, within 2 to 3 years, be head coach again from tight ends coach.
Jeez.
And the Giants also hired Mike Shula.
Wasn't he one of those Bengals rejects, too?
No, that was Dave Shula's brother, though, who was a Bengals reject. Because all the Shula boys have basically been rejects, and for my money, so is Don Shula. I think Don Shula's a waste of space, but he was the biggest cheating son of a bitch ever in the history of the NFL, and people will bitch about Bill Belichick. Wait a second. He ran the NFL's competition committee from the mid-'70s on while he was a head coach. He left the tarp. He made sure there was no tarp on the field in the '82 AFC Championship game, which put his team in Super Bowl 17. In 1970, at that time, the Baltimore Colts, when he left the Colts to go to the Dolphins, because of the way he left when he had a contract, the Miami Dolphins actually received one of the biggest fines in NFL history for tampering. I could go on and on, too, about Don Shula if you want, because screw him. All I know is this also. The last 22 years of his career, he never won a Super Bowl. Also, remember this. He also lost probably the biggest game in NFL history when he got beaten Super Bowl III as almost a 3-touchdown favorite.
Yeah, well, that was rough. That one.
Well, most of his career was rough, except for about a 5-year period with the Dolphins, where there was enough talent there that Jason Garrett probably could have won a Super Bowl with him. Maybe even Kyle Shanahan. Nah,
So you
probably
don't
not.
put anything in in the perfect season that doesn't count. It doesn't matter.
Oh no, he was a hell of a football coach. I'm just saying, when it comes to legends, I don't think you put him up there with a guy like Chuck Noll.
I,
You can't put him up there with Tom Landry. You can't put him up there with Vince Lombardi or Paul Brown or Bill Belichick. Those guys are all on a different level than him. So no, I'm not saying he wasn't a great coach. I'm just saying there's levels. And there was a level of, and see, Chuck Noll to me is the guy who gets pissed on the most. I mean, Chuck Noll may have been the greatest football coach of all time. Dude won 4 Super Bowls in a 6-year span. And you got to remember, he beat competition nobody else had to deal with. He beat Shula. You know, he beat Madden and the Raiders.
yeah.
Bump Phillips and the Oilers. Paul Brown and the Bengals. I mean, those were all great teams back in the day. And they were all there at the same time. It's not like today where, oh, the Chiefs are really good and the Niners are really good, but that's about it. You know, he was a guy, Chuck Noll, that also in the 80s took Mark Malone quarterbacked his team to an AFC championship game. Bubby Brister had them within 1 point of an AFC championship game in 1989. So to me, I think the most underrated quarterback of all time was Terry Bradshaw, and I think the most underrated coach of all time was Chuck Noll. I mean, people don't remember that the Steelers' first 40-some years of their franchise made the playoffs once. He came in 1969, went 1-13, and then before you know it, 3 years later, they're in the playoffs. And see, people forget also, the 1972 undefeated Steelers team, or Dolphins team, they played the AFC Championship game against the Steelers and only won that game 21-17. And then before you know it, Chuck Noll's winning it all. And they had the 2 years where they didn't win it all. But the 2 years where they didn't win it all, 1976, the Pittsburgh Steelers went 10-4. But to go 10-4, they had to win like their last 7 games. And they had to do it without Terry Bradshaw, who was hurt. Their starting quarterback was Mike Kruzek. And they had the greatest defense in NFL history in 1976. They had 4 shutouts, and in those 7 games, they didn't give up more than 7 points in any of them. And then, when they get to the playoffs, he goes and he bludgeons a Baltimore Colts team that was actually supposed to beat them. He had Bradshaw back, but the problem was, in the meantime, during that game, Franco Harris, Rocky Bleier both get hurt. They end up going to Oakland and losing. And then in 1977, same thing, where you had injuries that ate them up. They slipped into the playoffs. And then they lost to Denver, who eventually went to the Super Bowl by 3 points in Denver when they were like 10-point dogs. That's a team that, without injuries, could have very easily won 6 straight Super Bowls. I mean, because it was 4 out of 6. And the other thing you look at is this. Look at the teams Chuck Noll beat to win the Super Bowl. I mean, Super Bowl 9, he beats Bud Grant, legend coach, who had Fran Tarkington, Jim Marshall, Alan Page, Chuck Foreman. I mean, these guys, Mick Tingelhoff. There was like six Hall of Famers on that Vikings team. Super Bowl 10, he beats the Dallas Cowboys. I don't have to tell you about how great the Cowboys were back then. Super Bowl 13, he beats the Cowboys again. Super Bowl 14, he beats the Rams, and that Rams team was pretty damn good. I mean, that was a team with Jack Youngblood, Wendell Tyler. They were loaded. So the thing is, he wins 4 Super Bowls against 3 all-time great teams and against another team that's real damn good. On top of all of that, they won all 4 of those games in the fourth quarter because all 4 games were up in the air until then, which is where Terry Bradshaw then comes in, because all 4 Super Bowls he played in, he threw a touchdown pass that basically won them the game in the fourth quarter of every one of them. And almost every one of those touchdown passes wasn't a 20-yard dink on a post. He was throwing the ball deep to win those games. So that's my Pittsburgh Steelers history lesson for today, even though I hate them. But that's why I hate them, because they always beat my team. I mean, the Bengals early mid-'70s up till 1977 were always damn good. And I mean, they had multiple years though where they'd go 10-4, 11-3, and not even make the playoffs because Pittsburgh would win the division at 13-1 or 12-2. So I don't even know what our original take was on here, but let's go to the Philadelphia Eagles, who I think the biggest free agent here is Ronald Darby. And when you look at the Eagles, what do you think they need to do to get better and maybe do more than just win the division?
They need receivers. They need help on the outside. I think what they have now, Deshaun Jackson can't stay healthy. He's at the tail end of his career. Alshon Jeffrey is not a number one wide receiver. Nelson Aguilar can't hold on to the ball. So you can't really. I mean, Greg Ward looked okay, but he was on the practice squad and a converted quarterback once he started playing in December. They need to go and get Carson Wentz weapons, because if he's throwing 300 yards a game with Greg Ward, imagine what he can do with wide receivers.
Well, and I think also you had the cornerback position, which was unstable because of injuries. And when you look at what they could lose on the defensive side of the ball, I mean, you could lose Vinny Curry, Timmy Jerrigan, Hassan Ridgeway. All three of them are unrestricted free agents. I think Philadelphia is kind of at the same point as Dallas, where this is either going to go really bad or they're going to continue to win this division. And I think this is why, even though I think the Redskins and Giants are poorly run, that if either the Redskins or the Giants make some right decisions here, they could steal this division, because the Eagles have a lot of guys to replace. And then, like I said, you've also got Jordan Howard here and Jason Peters, who are, significant players that could leave in free agency also. And I know Peters is a little bit older, but I mean, he's still a good football player, and you still have to replace him either way.
Well, didn't they draft Dillard in the first round?
They did, but you do have to have two of those guys.
That's true.
And I mean, Andre Dillard to me is still developing. And, Lane Johnson's coming off an injury-shortened season. So they're going to want to keep Vaitai around too, or however the hell you say his name, and they could lose him. And I mean, this is probably the most injury-prone team in the NFL.
Who, Philly?
Yeah, I mean, damn, they had injuries all year, especially wide receiver, corner, and they still won the division. And you also got to ask the question, Jordan Howard only played in 10 games. He missed the second half of the regular season, and they've got Miles Sanders. So do you think that they just kind of move on from Howard?
Yeah. I think they can move on from Howard, because I think Jordan Howard's going to want to get paid, not big-time money, but maybe a little bit more than Philly might want to pay them. So I think Howard moves on, which means you do need to bring another pure in-between the tackles running back, because we know that Doug Peterson likes to use a couple of different running backs and can do a couple of different things.
Yeah, and I think the one saving grace for the Eagles is they do have the best head coach, and they do have the best quarterback in the division.
Well, do we not count Mike McCarthy since he hasn't coached yet?
I wouldn't count Mike McCarthy because he's nowhere near as good as Doug Peterson.
How
many Super Bowls did he win?
One.
How many years did he coach?
10, 12? How many?
Okay. How many did Doug Peterson coach?
He's there now how many years? 4? 5?
4 or 5, and he's won a Super Bowl, and he's a better coach. And I'll tell you this. You really need to take off the Homer glasses, because Mike McCarthy couldn't win with Aaron Rodgers. It's been a decade since he won with Aaron Rodgers. And he had Aaron Rodgers for 8 or 9 years after that and didn't win. And when Aaron Rodgers would get hurt, they usually had a losing season. So It's not a shot at Mike McCarthy. I didn't like Mike McCarthy when he was in Green Bay, and I thought that his teams were undercoached. We'll put it that way. All right, let's move on to the Washington Redskins. What do you think? How far away are the Redskins?
Miles.
Huh?
Miles away. I think Ron Rivera, I'm not a big Ron Rivera guy. If people are down on Jason Garrett, they should be maybe a little bit more down on Ron Rivera. Sure, he got to a Super Bowl and lost, but in 10 years in Carolina, 9 or 10 years, he's only had 3 winning seasons. I think he's going to shift the culture in Washington. I think that's going to change. I think there'll be a more competitive football team, but I think that's the ceiling with Ron Rivera.
Well, I think it's going to be hard to change the culture when the owner runs the culture. So we'll see if the owner allows him, Daniel Snyder, to do that. I think the thing that stands out to me most here is you've got, Schreffs, or whatever the hell his name is, the offensive lineman. You got Eric Flowers, who was a top 10 pick by the Giants. I think he sucks, but what the hell? You got Donald Penn. So they're going to have to replace most of their offensive line also.
Good.
Okay. The problem is, one of those guys was actually pretty good, but not the other two. But the point is this: would he have to replace them or not? You do have to find offensive linemen, and you got to find more than 1 or 2 here.
They got to gut this whole team.
Yeah. And the problem with gutting the whole team is, then you're going to stick Dwayne Haskins in even a more precarious predicament, if you know what I mean.
Could it get any worse?
I can barely hear you.
Could it get any worse than it was?
It could get worse because you could completely ruin him. Because right now, I wasn't big on Haskins coming out. But, I mean, you got to give him some kind of fair chance and give him some weapons and a little bit of an offensive line to really find out. But the problem is, if you don't do that, and he just gets his head hammered in all year for this next year, then you're back to the point where
you need another quarterback.
Yeah. And then you just set everything back 3 to 5 years again. So if I was Ron Rivera, I'd have waited for a better job opening, to tell you the truth.
Like when? Next year?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, just wait another year, because why take a shot at something like this? Because I think the Redskins roster is pretty much decimated. The best thing you got on is Darius Geis, who
can't stay on the field.
Yeah, he's going to play 4 to 7 games, and that's going to be it.
I think they have some good pieces on defense, especially in that front 7.
I do too, but once again, I think they have next to no pieces on the offensive line. And that's a huge issue with a young quarterback. And there's not any NFL team, even the worst team, has some pieces, because they're NFL football players. So I don't know. I think this division will be won by probably, if I had to bet it right now, I would just say the Eagles, just because of Peterson. But I think it's between the Eagles, with the Cowboys having a shot if they do things right, and the Giants and Redskins. I just have huge doubts whether they're going to be able to do anything in the near future, just because of the way their teams run, not even necessarily who the coaches are.
I would give the Giants more of a shot than Washington, because they have more talent.
Too. Because Daniel Jones, if he's the real deal, that can fix a lot of ills, especially when you can just hand the ball off to Saquon Barkley. But, I mean, that's the only reason I would give him a better chance. Actually, I don't think the Giants are that far behind the Cowboys, according to how the Cowboys play this offseason.
It's hard to disagree with that right now.
Yeah, because I just think it's according to how the Cowboys do this. And the problem with that is, as we've seen since Jimmy Johnson left, Jerry Jones is not good to leave on his own running the football team. I mean, he'll make some good signings, But invariably, there'll be more bad than good with him, which bites him in the ass.
I mean, I don't know if Jerry's ever going to learn his lesson.
I think it's obvious that he hadn't. Just like it's obvious that Mike Brown has never learned his lesson. So I think there's a lot of issues there. But, all right, what do you think about Greg Olsen? Where do you think he goes?
You know, he's going to, 2 or 3 different free agent visits with the
I know
latest.
he's going to Seattle, too.
Yeah, that's the latest one. I think also heard Buffalo. I don't mind either place if it was Seattle with Russell Wilson. You know, they have Will Dissly, who looks really good, but he also gets hurt. You know, back-to-back years, Will Dissly scores a lot of touchdowns, looks like he's going to be another red zone weapon, and then he suffers a season-ending injury. I think Greg Olsen will put a little bit more stability there. And then with the Buffalo Bills, you have a young tight end in Dawson Knox who has a lot of promise. If Olsen went there, he can kind of be that mentor for Dawson Knox and also a little bit more of a safety blanket for Josh Allen. I don't mind either spot for Olsen.
He is also going to Washington to visit with the Redskins.
Oh, God.
Well, Ron Rivera is his guy.
Yeah, I mean, for Greg Olsen's sake, go to Seattle, go to Buffalo.
Yeah, I think Buffalo, they need weapons. It would be perfect. Actually, with Greg Olsen, he's a hell of a tight end. Anywhere he goes will work out for him. I mean, he's going to be good no matter where he goes, as long as he can stay healthy. But
is this going to be like almost like what a Tony Gonzalez did at the end?
Yeah, but I don't remember Tony Gonzalez when he was in Kansas City having a lot of injury issues.
No, but I'm just saying, like, you know, Tony Gonzalez in Atlanta, and he was ancient, was still having big years.
Yeah, but once again, he wasn't having the injury issues Olsen's had. What about New England?
Yeah, I mean, of course, that's the destination, but who's your quarterback? You need to figure that out if you're the Patriots. And if you're the Patriots, and there's all these reports saying that they're going to pay Tom 30, you know, they're willing to pay him $30 million, you need to get him. Then what about all the other weapons?
Well, the problem with that is this. I think that they're throwing out that they're offering him $30 million to make him look bad and to make him, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, we offered him this and he still didn't want it. I just think it's BS. Robert Kraft is basically, like every other NFL owner, just some rich white dude that ain't worth anything. You know, he's used to being able to do whatever he wants. And that's what happens. I mean, Robert Kraft's a moron. Hell, he's drunk half the time. Probably hangs out with Irsay all the time. But Robert Kraft is a great owner because he got lucky and he got Bill Belichick and he left him alone. Jerry Jones would have been Robert Kraft if he would have just left Jimmy Johnson alone for the next 20 years.
Well, let me tell you something. He hasn't been. If he would have left Bill alone, they would still have Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, I know, but see, that's the thing, and that's where all this went south. So, at least for Patriots fans, he waited until about 20 years after. With the Cowboy fans, it was after like year 3 or 4, and then, you know, he gets jealous. But that's what I think here. Because I think Kraft eventually, within the next 2 years, is not going to have either one of them, and then the Patriots are going to be the Patriots again. If you know what I'm saying.
Enjoy it while it lasts, Patriots fans. Doesn't last forever.
No, it doesn't last forever. It seems like it for Patriot fans. But Sam will be back with us tomorrow. We don't know what we're talking about yet, but do you want to tell everybody where they can find you on the FF Face-Off with Mike Hoff?
Yeah. Follow me on Twitter at The Real NFL Guru. You can follow my show at the FF Face-Off. We can be found at all the top social media and podcast platforms.
All right. You can follow me at Grueling Truth. You can hear us wherever podcasts are, including iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, whatever, YouTube. You know the drill. But for now, for Anthony Cervino, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.